Welcome to The Explainer. All right, today we're going to dive into something that honestly powers pretty much everything you do online, from your banking app to your favorite online store. We're talking about database resource management. And it sounds kind of technical, I know, but it's really all about taming that absolute chaos of data and turning it into something incredibly valuable.
Okay, so here's the plan for today. First, we're going to figure out what data really is. Then, we'll get into how we organize all that chaos. We'll talk about the software that runs the whole show, how you design a good database, and even meet the people whose job it is to protect it. And finally, we'll zoom out and see the big picture.
First up, we've got to establish a super important distinction: the difference between data and information. Yeah, they might sound like the same thing, but they are worlds apart. So what's the deal with raw facts anyway?
So take a look at this. On the left, you've got data. It's just a jumble of stuff, right? 2100234556, emit, English, 65. What does that even mean? Not much on its own. But when you give it some context, when you organize it, bam, on the right you get information. Student emits English mark is 65. Now that is something you can actually use.
Okay, so how in the world do we start to bring some order to all this raw, messy data? Well, the answer is you build a structure. You build a hierarchy.
Let's break down how this whole hierarchy gets built. The best way to think about it is like putting together a digital filing cabinet. You wouldn't just toss random papers in a drawer, would you? No, you'd create a system, starting with the smallest bits and building your way up. At the very bottom, the most basic unit is the field. This is just one single piece of data: a name, a number, an email address. It's the absolute fundamental building block. So, what's next? You take a bunch of those related fields and you group them together to make a record. So, if a field is just the customer's name, the record is their whole contact card. Name, address, phone number, all in one place. Then, a collection of all those records becomes a file. To stick with our analogy, this is like taking every single one of your customer contact cards and popping them into the same folder. And finally, all of those files get organized into the database. And there you have it, the entire filing cabinet. It's a complete, structured system where everything is exactly where it should be, ready to be found in a snap. Okay, so we've got our perfectly organized filing cabinet, our database. That's great, but how do we actually use it? I mean, how do you find anything without digging through the whole thing by hand?
And that's where this really powerful piece of software comes in. It's called a Database Management System, or DBMS for short. This is the magic tool that lets us talk to the database and actually find, change, or even protect our data among millions of other records.
You know, the source material has this fantastic analogy for it. Think of the DBMS as your waiter at a restaurant. You don't have a clue what's going on back in the kitchen, right? You don't need to. You just tell the waiter what you want, and poof, it shows up at your table. That's exactly what a DBMS does. You ask for the data you need, and it goes and gets it for you.
And look at all the jobs this thing does. The DBMS is the engine doing all the heavy lifting. It's not just fetching stuff. It's creating new data, letting us change it, making sure we don't have messy duplicates, and crucially, keeping it all secure. It's what makes the whole system tick.
So a really powerful, efficient database, it doesn't just appear out of thin air. No way. Just like building a house, you absolutely need a detailed plan, a blueprint, before you even think about starting.
This whole planning stage is called data modeling, and it is quite literally the architect's blueprint for your data. It's where you figure out what you're going to store, how all the pieces connect, and what the rules are. And it's a step-by-step process. You start high-level with a conceptual model, kind of like a napkin sketch. Then you get more detailed with a logical model. And finally, you create a physical model that lays out exactly how the bits and bytes are going to be stored on the actual computers.
Now, there's a really critical step in this design phase called normalization. The best way to think about it is just tidying up. You're cleaning up the blueprint to make it super efficient and to stop any potential errors or data messes before they ever happen. For instance, just look at this table. Before normalization, the student's name, Amit, is repeated for every single subject. That's not just a waste of space, it's a nightmare waiting to happen. Imagine you need to update his name. You'd have to find and change it in every single spot. It's a recipe for disaster.
But check this out. After normalization, we split it up. Now we've got two neat little tables. One just links the student's ID to their name, the other links that same ID to their subjects and marks. See? No more repeating Amit over and over again. It's clean, it's efficient, and the big takeaway is this: A little bit of smart design up front saves you from a massive headache down the line. Trust me.
But you know, all this technology is only half the story. When you have a resource this important, you need a human expert watching over it, managing it, protecting it, and keeping it healthy.
And that expert is the Database Administrator, or DBA. Think of them as the guardian of the galaxy, but for data. They control everything. They decide who gets access, they make sure the data is accurate, they bring the system back to life if it crashes, and they're always looking for ways to make it run faster and better.
All right, for our last point, it's really important to get this. We've been talking a lot about databases, but not all giant collections of data are used for the same thing. There's a really key difference we need to understand.
And this slide just nails it. A normal database, on the left, is all about the day-to-day. It's built for speed, for processing a sale, for looking up her record right now. But a data warehouse, over on the right, that's a different beast entirely. It's a massive collection of historical data built for analysis. It's what lets managers ask those big strategic questions, like what were our sales trends over the last 5 years?
So, that leaves us with this one big question to think about. Every single click, every purchase, every little interaction, it's all creating data. Piles and piles of it. So is all that data your company's biggest asset? Or is it just your biggest mess? You know, getting a handle on all this stuff, the structure, the management, the design, that's how you start turning that chaos into your most powerful secret weapon.